after working and living in St Ives for more than 10 years, I wanted to try and create an environment where I could live and work, and where the place was actually influencing my work as well. So here we have this environment where over a period of time we've managed to create different spaces within the property, and so there are areas of woodland and there's an open field, and it's interesting that I can just go and think in various locations or work in various locations. And I also know just over the hill there's the sea. So it's very easy for me just to hop in the car and within a couple of minutes I'm at Prussia Cove. And I know just up the hill I can look across and I can see Godolphin Hill in one direction, I can see engine houses, and there's a kind of rich history of this land that I love. Particularly going down into West Penwith, where the land becomes very diverse and there are these wide open moorland areas which very quickly turn into deep valleys and then run down to the coast, which is often quite stunning. But I do really love these ancient moorlands, and you mean some of the field patterns there they've been there since Neolithic times. So there's this amazing rich sense of history, and I've always really been drawn to these ancient landscapes. In Oxfordshire, I would often pick up flints from the field, the little tools, flint tools. Stonehenge and Avebury were just down the road, and I think it's one of the elements that drew me to Cornwall. I wanted to be close to the ocean, but the fact that it also has this ancient feel about it, these connections with generations and generations of inhabitants, that really enriches the whole experience and makes it more special for me. As a painter, it's really important for me that my work continues to move forward. And during the past few years, one element that has really helped me to do that is when I've travelled to different parts of the world. And my visits to Hong Kong and New York have really pushed the work in new directions and encouraged me to use the paint in a very different way, use different colour palettes, different forms, and still have this strong anchor point here in Cornwall. The Cornish landscape is still really important to me. So I like this idea of a quest, of a voyage of discovery almost. And my most recent visit to Greece has taken the work in a slightly different direction again. And for that reason, I wanted to call this show Odyssey, because I like this idea of travelling and finding new subject matter, new information. I was really, again, bowled over by the intense light and those stunning little white towns where the walls are all whitewashed and the light just sort of bounces around. And it took me a while to try and capture that sort of light, because I realised that supposedly it's all white and very simple, but when you see the tones and the colours that are going on within the white in shadow and in sunlight, it's a very complex colour palette, and it's something that took me a while to to get right. This is an oil on canvas, and when I'm working in oil, I tend to start off very loosely. I have an idea in my mind about what the composition needs to do, but at this stage I just want to get down some paint and allow some textures to form, just to make the surface interesting. This will then be allowed to dry. I will then come back over the top with other layers, but at this point I love the quality of the paint, the way the paint sits on the canvas, and I can mix the colours together and just see what comes out of those applications. The image starts to become too solidly formed, I will often just move it around to form this, to create more of a ghostly image really. I don't want to be too set in stone at the moment. The whole thing needs to be very open and breathing. So it allows me then to move things around if I need to, and just, I think quite a lot about the painting between each stage. So by the time I come to actually apply paint to the canvas, it's a very sort of subconscious, open procedure. It's important to get rid of all of the white of the canvas, because while it's there, it will totally throw the rest of the colours. So little by little it disappears. Just will bring a bit more blue in through this grey now. It's usually a case of constantly crossing over with colours. I tend not to use that many colours in one painting, but try and get the maximum effect from them. So for instance, when you see a blue mixed with a grey, it creates these incredible, very subtle variations of colour and tone. And that is, it's not something you can totally plan. It partly depends on what is happening with that particular paint on the day, and going with it really. That's the exciting part of the whole thing. Never knowing exactly what's going to happen up to a point, but at the end of the day being able to balance it and control it to bring it back. I like this feeling of total freedom being balanced with a knowledge of technique and a thorough knowledge of the subject as well, which allows me to hopefully bring the viewer back to that original experience, the shock of the blue that I saw on that day in Greece, and all the layering of textures that were there as I walked through the town. So it's more of a complete experience of the subject, not just viewing it from a particular place. It's many memories of the day all merging together to form one object.
I think one of the elements that I've noticed creeping into the new series of paintings quite a lot, when I was exploring some of the towns and villages in Greece, on the Greek islands, I was really drawn to some of the old doors and windows. They were the most incredible colours, going from blues, turquoises, but it was also the kind of weathered textures they had as well that drew me, and obviously many of them had been there for a very long time, and it's impossible to sort of recreate that texture. It's the weather of the sun and all of those things have an effect on the objects. But those textures, those surfaces actually stayed with me, and I think that is one of the things that has come through into these Greek paintings. It's this, there's a different kind of surface about them. I was intent that I wanted to recreate the colours, the classic colours, and try and get this sense of the light, which was difficult enough in itself. But these textures came through when I started to paint the buildings and the layers of paint. It was a bit like things evolving through time, and I've tried to exploit that. There are also a few door paintings. The Greek word for door is thera, and I've included a few taking me right back to that original thought about these amazing sort of iconic objects. And I like the fact that it's just a very simple form, and it works on abstract levels as well as being recognisable as something we all know and use every day. Almost an entry point into another world. And there is this underlying sense of history. You know, I loved visiting the island of Delos, which is where an ancient civilization evolved over a number of centuries, and it's now just ruins, but the pillars are lying there as they would have fallen. It was almost possible to hear the voices in the streets of those people. I felt really connected to it as a place. And aside from that, there was a great beauty to the Greek pillars and the doorways and the way they framed little views through to the sea.
So in this new group of work, the city paintings have evolved into slightly more abstract pieces. Some of the larger canvases were very much born out of the city paintings and sit very well alongside them. But I feel now the vocabulary, the visual vocabulary has become so refined that they almost don't, it doesn't matter if they're cities or not. I think they just work as forms and colours, and that's logically where I like to take the work. I like this fine balance between the figurative and the abstract, and playing with these very fine balances between the two. So some of the larger abstracts now are more about making a statement, making an effect, and balancing colour and form without thinking so much about the subject matter that they were born out of.